What's happening, studious improvisers? Trumpeter Bobby Spellman here. And if you are studying jazz, or any style of music for that matter, and you are working on expanding your improvisational vocabulary, there is no better way to do it than to transcribe some of your favorite solos. Now, I have a particular method that I like to use that helps me to get the most out of these transcriptions, and I would like to share it with you today on this exciting episode of Theory with Bob. There are a number of reasons that you may want to transcribe an improvised solo from a recording, but for the purposes of this video, we will break it down into two possible objectives, which will dictate the way we approach the process of transcription. First, you may be listening to a recording and you just hear a little part of a solo, let's say a lick or a phrase that you really like and you want to be able to play or to understand better. This is the fastest thing you can do in transcription, is just to take a little piece from the solo. Now, in this instance, the whole grand methodology that I'll talk about later on in the video is not as important. In this case, you could play the recording, play through that section a couple of times, listen to it, press play and pause on your media player of choice, and then with your instrument slowly work out what the notes are that you're trying to figure out. And then you can choose to write it down if you want. This is a very fast process, and it's helpful if you're only just trying to extract from the solo a short phrase. However, the second reason you may choose to transcribe a solo is to try to get as much knowledge and information out of it as possible. Now, that includes from an improvised solo, not only the notes and the rhythms, but also the contour of the entire solo, as well as certain stylistic decisions that the improviser chose to use within that solo. Transcribing an entire solo is an extremely useful tool for really understanding the nuance of jazz improvisation and absorbing all of this vocabulary and style into your own playing. Because once again, there may be a lot inside of a solo that's not obvious upon first listen. But when you dive into the depths and really try to learn the entirety of what a musician has played, you will often find that you learn things that you didn't even set out to learn. That there are elements to a musician's playing that if you had just tried to extract a lick or two here or there, or a certain phrase, you may not have gotten. So I certainly recommend very frequently going through and trying to transcribe an entire solo. There's a lot to be learned there, and you will get a lot out of it. So if you are transcribing an entire solo, there are a couple of different ways you can go about it, but this is my favorite way. Now, before we dive in here, I first learned this method from my first jazz teacher, David Schumacher, back in West Newbury, Massachusetts. And I believe that David learned it from the great Ran Blake. So before we dive in, I would recommend everybody check out this book, Ran Blake's Primacy of the Ear. This has a lot of information in it, not only an approach to absorbing vocabulary and studying music and ear training, but also sort of a philosophical approach to developing your own personal sound. So I definitely check out Ran Blake's Primacy of the Ear, and I owe sort of Ran Blake's greater philosophy for my view on how to transcribe solos. So this is going to be very similar to my video on how to memorize music. They are certainly interrelated. So some of this may sound familiar if you've seen that video, and if you haven't, you can check it out. But here's how it goes. Pick a solo that you want to play. This is a part of the operation. Pick a solo that you like. I mean, your job as a jazz musician or as a musician of any style is to try to capture your own personal sound. One of the things that I absolutely love about jazz music is the fact that you can listen to often just a couple of notes of somebody's playing and be able to identify who they are. The idea of developing your own personal sound as an artist is, to me, a really compelling and beautiful part of being an improviser. So embrace what you like. Don't transcribe solos that you really hate, because that doesn't make any sense. You want to pick out musicians that really speak to you and that whose sound you want to try to assimilate to some degree into your own playing. Now, that being said, you should also choose solos that you think are within your maybe at the edge of your comfort range, but are not so far out that it's going to be impossible to do this. So if you're new to transcription, pick solos that are very melodic. Certain musicians that I think are very useful to check out for very melodic and playable solos, certainly in the jazz trumpet world, would include Miles Davis, especially in the 50s, Chet Baker, especially in the 50s, but throughout his career. Sweets Edison would be a great example of a very melodic trumpet player. There are many examples in saxophone and trombone and piano world as well. But pick a musician in the beginning that you think is going to, whose solo you will be able to play and you'll be able to hear, because as you do more transcriptions, your ears will get stronger and more fine-tuned, and you'll be able to pick out some more elaborate solos. But you don't want to get too frustrated in the beginning. You also don't want to do something that's too easy. So that's the first step, is pick out a solo that you think is going to be interesting, that will expand your ability to do this, but that's not so, complex as to make this frustrating. All right, once you have a solo picked out, then your job is first and foremost to memorize that solo. So this brings us back to my video on how to memorize music, but it goes like this. You should play that recording basically on repeat, play it many times, actively listening to the recording. Now, passively listening when you're doing other things like traveling somewhere, driving in a car, doing dishes, whatever it happens to be, and you happen to be listening to music in the background, that's better than not listening to music at all. But active listening to music where you're sitting in a chair and focused on the music that is being played is the best way to absorb the music. So pick a track, listen to that solo on repeat until you're able to sing the solo along with the recording. Once you have that point where you can sing the entire solo along with the recording, then your job is to try to see if you can sing the solo without the recording on your own. Now, you may find that if it's a particularly long or complicated solo that you may need to do this chorus by chorus. So you could pick out, 32 measures of the improvisation, for example, and listen to that on repeat until you can sing that, and then take it away from the recording and be able to sing it on your own without the recording. It may be helpful to go, piece by piece, but by and large, you're trying to capture as much of the solo in your memory as is possible. Once you feel like you can accurately sing the solo outside of the recording, only then is it your job to see if you can put it on your musical instrument. So one of the things that Rand Blake recommended is that you try to play it without even necessarily knowing what the key is. Just try to work out the melodies from memory and then, transpose it once you figure out what the key is. That can be a little bit time consuming, so I think it might be wise to start off with, just for expediency, knowing what key the piece is in and maybe the first note or two from the recording. And then from there, you can work it out on your instrument and try to be able to play through it. Once you feel like you have a handle on being able to play the solo on your instrument, then you go back and play it along with the recording so that you can hear if there are any places where there are discrepancies between what you thought you heard and what was actually on the recording. So if you're playing the solo along with the musician with the recording, that will give you the opportunity to catch any mistakes you may have made and to refine them so that you are accurate as possible with the way that the solo is played. Furthermore, playing along with the recording gives you the opportunity to practice many of the things in jazz performance that exist outside of the written page. There's obviously notes and rhythms can be notated, but a lot of what makes a solo great is the nuance of the way that a musician plays the solo. So certain, scoops or bends or timbral choices, different things you can do. These are all as much as important a part of an improvised solo as the notes themselves in many ways. The way that the time feel is, different musicians have different time feels. Playing along with the recording gives you the opportunity to work that out. All right, at this point, if you can accurately play the transcription along with the recording, if you can play the solo from memory along with the recording, you're 95% of the way there. The last and final stage is to sit down, if you feel like it. This isn't even a mandatory part of this, and write it down. All right? So once you have the solo, get yourself one of these notebooks so you can keep track of all your transcriptions and write the solo down. Now, this is not as important for memorizing the solo and for incorporating the music into your own vocabulary, but it is helpful because oftentimes you're not going to remember a solo indefinitely, even if you've committed it to your long-term melodic memory. and it helps to be able to go back and remind yourself of what was going on in a solo. Furthermore, having it written down is really helpful if you're trying to analyze what's happening in the solo, because it's easy to see if you have the chord changes written in, specifically the relationship between the melodies and the chords, if you have it written down on a piece of paper and you can look at it. I find that very helpful to be able to see what people are doing. And then lastly, there are certain rhythmic things, for example, or maybe even melodic things that you'll notice if you're writing it down that you might not have noticed just playing it in the ether. Now, that being said, writing it down is an optional step. It's the last step. And if you do the first several steps in memorizing the music and then playing the music on your instrument, you will have absorbed a lot of the sound of the music, a lot of the musical, melodic, intervallic, and rhythmic choices that your favorite musicians have used in the solo. And this will really help to inspire not only your ability to play this kind of style, but also it will inspire you to come up with other ideas that are even sometimes very remotely related to the ideas in the solo. So, in my view, this is a much more effective way of transcribing solos than just sitting down with your computer and pressing play and pause, trying to work out each note as you go. Oh, that's that note, that's that note. You may find in particularly fast or complicated passages that you have to do that, or you have to use some kind of an app that slows the music down, things of that nature. And that's fine in the circumstance in which you're trying to transcribe very complicated phrases. But if you are trying to really absorb the music so that it becomes a part of your musical personality and your personal sound, the best way to do it is to really try to absorb the music and memorize it all and then be able to play it on the instrument. Now, once again, if you have to do this chorus by chorus because it's somewhat complicated, that is fine as well. You'll still get a lot more out of it than if you just go through and try to figure out a solo note for note on the instrument. This is also much more effective than just picking up a book of transcriptions and playing the transcriptions, because if you just read through some transcriptions, that's also better than not doing anything, of course, and there may be a lot of value in having books of transcription for the benefit of analysis and for the benefit of practicing sight reading, things of that nature. But you're not going to absorb the music as thoroughly, and you won't make it as much of a part of your own personal sound as if you sit down and really memorize the music in advance of playing it. You will also find, in my view, let me put it like this, I find that it's much easier to play the solo as well if I've already memorized it, if I already have it floating around in my head. And in fact, I find that if I've really put the time in to absorb a solo in my mind, I can slow it down in my own head instead of having to put it into an app and slow it down, or go into YouTube and put it at 75% speed or something like that. I can really fine-tune in my mind's ear what that music is going to sound like and sort of slow it down in my own head. What you will find if you are new to transcription is this is difficult, but do not despair, because the more you do this, the more you will find that your ears are fine-tuned and you are not only able to transcribe things better, but when you're listening to music, you will pick up on subtle nuances of melody and harmony and rhythm in a way that you weren't before. So this is not only an exercise to expand your vocabulary and learn music, but it's an exercise in really developing your ears to be able to hear music so that these transcriptions become easier and easier. Certainly, certain transcriptions that I did when I was young would seem to be very easy now, and at that time were difficult, and transcriptions that I've been able to do now would be impossible when I was younger and just learning how to do this. So stay with it, because even if it seems difficult now, the more you do it, the more you're exercising that muscle to do it, and the easier transcriptions will get, and the wider your vocabulary will become, and the better a musician you will be. All right, gang, I hope that helps in your quest for transcription and expanding your musical vocabulary. If you like this video, give us a like and subscribe to the channel. And stick around for next week's video on more on jazz and improvisation and theory and trumpet and the like. All right, gang, have a wonderful time transcribing your favorite solos, and I'll catch you on the next one. See ya. Theory with Bob. All right, gang, thanks so much for checking out this video. We hope it helps in your quest for the majesty of musical self-expression. The Ridgewood School of Music is currently accepting new students for lessons online or in person in the Brooklyn, Queens, and New York City area. If you'd like us to help set you up with the perfect teacher for the instrument or style that you're interested in studying, you can find us on our website at www.ridgewoodschoolofmusic.com, or you can shoot us an email at ridgewoodschoolofmusic@gmail.com. If you enjoyed this video and you would like to support the creation of new videos like this one, you can find us on our Patreon at patreon.com/Ridgewood School of Music. There, as a subscriber to the Patreon, you can gain access to bonus content, including bonus videos, exercises in improvisation and different instruments, as well as bonus transcription videos. So, if you'd like to help support the creation of new videos like this one, find us on our Patreon, and it's a real big help. All right, gang, have a wonderful time practicing, and we'll catch you on the next one. See ya.